Welcome to the latest episode of Dysfunctional, and today I am joined by Karinne, who is a survivor born in the Jehovah's Witnesses and raised by narcissistic parents in a system that demanded submission, silence, and purity at all costs. At 16, Karinne was kicked out of the family home and had to go on her own journey towards healing. In this episode, we talk about what it means to grow up in a cult, the deep confusion of waking up to the abuse that was disguised as righteousness, and the long, messy, but at times beautiful path to healing. Karinne is beautifully honest, deeply grounded, and full of hard-won wisdom. This is a conversation that will stay with you. Please be aware that this episode contains discussions of childhood sexual abuse, religious trauma, suicide attempts, and domestic violence. Please take care and do what you need to do to look after yourself while listening. And I hope that you can take as much from this episode as I did. Dysfunction is everywhere. In our families, in our cultures, and in our systems. And this is Dysfunctional, the podcast that helps you name the things that most people can or won't see. Let's call it out, break it down, and maybe even start a bloody revolution. Karinne, I'm very, very excited to have this conversation with you today. So welcome. How are you feeling?
Thank you. I'm feeling good. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to pick your brain a bit.
Yeah, and I'm excited to pick yours too, actually, and see where we go with this. So, look, I'm super interested to kind of get into some of your experience. So, why don't I hand it over to you, and you start by just telling us a little bit about who you are, and where you are in your life today.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the Jehovah Witnesses cult. So I was born and raised. I'm a child sexual abuse survivor, a narcissistic abuse survivor, and I've kind of woken up to the trauma and everything that I've been through in my life recently, which was kind of like a wrecking ball effect a little bit. You were actually quite an integral part of my waking up and realizing how toxic my family and my parents were. Because when you're in that world, you don't realize that it's abnormal. To you, it's normal, everything that you've been through. So yeah, definitely after being out of the cult for many years, having children of my own, I've come to terms with so many incredible things. It's like a new life. You learn to live again. And I guess that's where I'm at right now.
So it's incredible, right? Incredible that you were able to escape and get to where you are. I'm gonna ask what might feel dumb question to you. The Jehovah's Witnesses, right?
Mhm.
Is is the whole thing a cult, or is there cults within it? Because all I know about Jehovah's Witness is every now and then they knock at my door, right? And I don't know, try and give me like the Bible or something, whatever they're trying to give me, right? So is the whole thing a cult, or is there like cults within it?
I have to say that it's cults within a cult. It's very cliquey. There's a lot of judgment. So they obviously the whole organization is a sham. Obviously, this is all in my opinion, but you have many cliques within that organization, many tiers of power, if I can refer to those. So you have, the leaders and then the sub leaders, and the sub leaders that are kind of divided up in each congregation, and they rule the congregation, trying to, I guess, keep the order, so to speak. It's a very sheltered community because you're not allowed to have friends that are outside of the Jehovah Witnesses. You're not allowed to socialize with anyone that's not a Jehovah Witnesses just by fear of you being influenced into leaving or getting educated on world affairs, for example. So there's no holidays, no Halloween, no Christmas, no birthdays. Um, Everything is really within that group. So you're conditioned, indoctrinated, to just keep everything within the group or your family. So yeah, definitely, it's very God centric.
Is that? Can
Yeah,
I just ask just quickly? Is that
yeah.
what you're telling me about all of that, not allowed to have friends outside of it and all that stuff, is that for everybody, including the adults, or just when you're a child?
Yes, it's including adults. So when you're a child, when you go to school, which was an incredibly awkward time for me, you're told to not socialize with these kids that you're going to school with.
So you went
Um,
to a regular school,
yeah,
but you weren't allowed to socialize with the other children in the school.
no,
Wow.
which makes for a very awkward childhood because as a kid, you want to discover, you want to play with others, you want to, you know, be able to develop those social skills, but you're encouraged not to. You can only do that with other Jehovah Witness kids. So it's a very complex world to maneuver at a young age because it messes with your self-esteem, it messes with your formative years, it messes with everything. And it turned me into a very awkward adult because you're very under socialized on so many fronts. You're not encouraged to watch the news. As a kid, I wasn't allowed to watch cartoons because there was magic and violence in them, and that's, against God. So it's very sheltered, and you're not allowed to go outside of that little nest of Jehovah Witnesses. It has to be all held within.
Wow. And when you say, because you said a few times, like you're encouraged to not
Yeah.
watch the news or encouraged not to have friends, like how's that enforced?
They will have multiple meetings a week. So usually it's like Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays. And during those meetings is when they have those, I guess, speeches, discourses where they're going to talk about the Bible. And they give their interpretation of what the Bible means. So they talk a lot about how the devil can sway you. So the devil will sway you by, you know, watching movies that talk about, spiritualism or violence or anything that can sway you away from God's word. And so people that are in the world is what they refer to them as worldly people that are not Jehovah Witnesses will attempt to sway us with, going out to clubs or bars or drinking too much. And that's all part of the devil's world. It's not part of God's world or the Jehovah Witnesses. And so everything that can lead you astray from the religion is bad. It's frowned upon. It's completely a big no. So Jehovah Witnesses will publish their own articles and their own books and so on and so forth, which you're encouraged to read. But they definitely discourage you from going online and doing research, watching the news. They'll take an approach where, oh, it's depressing. You shouldn't watch that. Concentrate on reading your Bible and studying because that will make you happy. So it's very controlled. You're not allowed to self-reflect very much or think for yourself. It is all given to you. You're indoctrinated and you need to follow the Jehovah Witness rules, basically.
Yeah. So that's like when I think of like cults, what it means to be a cult, because I feel like there are parts of the healing space, the wellness industry that are starting to feel cult-like, right? It's that real sort of conformity, right? You must conform to the exact ideals, and that takes away your autonomy, right? Because away from the ideals of the group, you'll be ostracized, and you are it's
Completely.
considered you're nobody, right? What, like, you're looking back and very bravely, by the way, sharing with us like your truth of the experience. What was it like as a child? Did you feel confused? Like, the reason I'm asking, as I'm the child of an alcoholic, right? So
Mhm.
it was normal to me until it wasn't.
Yep.
Like, do you remember feeling like your experience wasn't normal, or was it normal to you? And it's looking back retrospectively, you can see all of this. What was the experience like as a child?
Well, I completely relate to you on that front. It was normal to me until it wasn't. I remember thinking when I was younger, I don't want to be a part of this. Like I would look at other kids go trick-or-treating and I wanted to be one of those kids. But you're always brought in by fear. mind control. That was a big thing for me as a kid was the Jehovah Witnesses believe that if you don't follow the rules, you don't get to inherit paradise on earth when the end of days will come. Oh, you won't be with your family if you disobey, if you don't follow our rules. So you're always conditioned by fear. And I was controlled by it for the longest time. My mother, being a very toxic narcissist, was the same thing. I would get beatings on a regular basis. I had to listen, I had to follow rules all the time. It kept me in line, it kept me submissive. Which is another thing that the Jehovah Witnesses teach you at a very young age is to be submissive to men and to God. So women don't really have a voice. You have to let men rule and men take the lead. And as a kid, you can't help but think, is there another kind of life outside of this that would be better? Watching TV shows as I got a bit older made me really think a lot. Like, this looks like a loving family, or why are they not beating their kids? Or like you go through this, it's like a whirlwind, like a hurricane in your mind where you're stuck in a place with no way out, but you really want to get out. So it's constant confusion. And trying to talk about it with my parents it was hell on earth. It was, a smack upside the head, or this is what God is asking. That's it. You don't ask questions. So you're like a little soldier all the time. You're just following these rules and you don't really have a voice. You don't have self-esteem. You don't have self-confidence. You're just going with the flow, which turned me into a very tormented and, as my mom refers to, rebellious teenager. Because one day I kind of went like, this is enough. Like, I can't live like this anymore. And I was, it caused me so much confusion. I ended up in the hospital for suicide attempts as a teen because it was just too much to bear. I couldn't talk about my abuse as a child. I was blamed for it. So you internalize so many things, and there's a lot of self-shaming and blaming, and it just seems like you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is where I kind of spiraled out when I was a teenager, and it was really difficult. So I'm happy that even though I went down an insanely dark path, and it might be a bit late in life now, but I finally have come to terms with my religious trauma, everything that's happened to me, and I'm finally awake on so many different fronts. And it's like I'm able to live again. It's
Mm.
not perfect. You can't ever fully heal from so many scars, but you can definitely have um, a better life and be able to process things and I guess deal with them, learn to live with them might be a better term, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you on the kind of, not even sure you can say deal with them, but
Yep.
learning to live with them, right? Yeah, no, I understand where you're at with that language. Before, because I want to come on to like what it was like as a teenager when you started to really wake up to that stuff. But there's a question, I've got a burning question. When you interacted with other children from the cult itself, do you feel like they were all feeling the same as you? Or do you think there was some like, do you think you struggled the most because you were so unwilling, deep down at least, right? It might not have felt like it in the early stages, but like deep down, you were a bit of a like, I mean, I see the word rebel as a positive, really, particularly in this. Like you were willing to stand up and say this isn't okay, or you were willing to like look into that truth. It must be the case that there were many children that weren't like that, I'm assuming.
Not at all. I never dared say anything when I was a kid because if I did, it was, I'd get hit. So in my house, it was like belts, wooden spoons was my mom's favorite. The occasional washing the tongue with soap if I lied, or so I never dared to step out of that little box that my parents crammed me into, just by fear. I was completely conditioned by fear. It's only when I came into my teen years that I started having a bit of a voice. In high school. I'd have people go, "Are you really happy being a Jehovah Witness?" And I was like, "No." And all these kids that were around me at that time would make me think more. And I started wanting to break out of that box and explore what was out there and deal with my pain, which I did in a horrible way. I was smoking by the time I was 14, 15. I started drinking, had a really big alcohol problem when I was a teenager because I didn't know how to cope with everything that I was waking up to, all these feelings, my past abuse, all the physical abuse and emotional abuse that I went through with my parents. It's kind of like having this big dump just poured on you and you don't know how to get out of it. You don't know how to deal with it or maneuver. You have no life skills. You have absolutely nothing. But I still wanted to fight and make a life for myself. And it wasn't easy. But the first time I went in therapy, I was 18 and a lot of things kind of opened up for me. And I realized a lot of things at that point. But before then, it was just like the constant struggle and the torment and trying to come to terms with what I was feeling, the confusion of this isn't normal, but it's what you've been conditioned to think. So you're constantly being pulled in two different directions, not knowing what the right path is. It's difficult when you are born and raised in a cult because it's all you've ever known. You don't have any other choice. You don't have any other options. It's the only thing that you know. So when you start waking up, it feels so wrong, but at the same time, it feels so right because nothing makes sense anymore. So it's a really messed up and fucked up process to come to terms with all of that at a young age and try to decipher life and who you are. So yeah, it was crazy.
Which, so when you went, you said you went to therapy when you were 18.
Mhm.
Was that, had you come out of the cult by then?
Yes, I did. I was about 16 or 17 when um, I guess I got out of the cult. Trigger warning, I was groomed by my boss at the time. I was 16 or 17. He was 26, and I got manipulated into sleeping with him. And when my parents found out, instead of taking the approach of this is wrong, he's 26, you're a teenager. I got the what the hell were you thinking? You have disobeyed God. And my father went to the elders of the congregation, which they're kind of like priests. They're the ones that look over the congregation and make sure that everyone is in line. And I remember they called me into one of their meetings and they asked me if I was repentant in any way. And being the rebellious teen I was, I said, for what? And so they basically kicked me out of the Jehovah Witnesses. So they ostracized me and told me that I was no longer welcome amongst them. So I was very young, now being taken away from everyone I had ever known. My family, I couldn't speak to them anymore. I moved out of my parents very quickly after because they didn't want me under their roof anymore. And that's how I came to um, get hit by life very quickly. It was an apartment and learning how to pay bills and, having a full-time job and not knowing anything about life at all. And so I had a few friends that I had made at work that told me maybe you should, use the company benefits and go get you some therapy. And I was like, therapy, that's the devil's world, So I started researching and I found a therapist who literally opened my eyes to so many things. It was unbelievable. I think it was one of the best things I could have done for myself.
It's, you know, when I speak to a lot of people who grew up in abusive environments, right? And I kind of hear what you're saying about this cult is that it's almost like it gives extra power to your abusive parents, right? Because when
Mm.
I'm hearing people that have grown up in abuse, there's a lot of work that has to go in from their parents to keep the outside out and keep
Yep.
things a secret and all that kind of stuff. But it's almost like your parents had the backing of this whole system that, must have made you even more feel like you were crazy. Can I let me ask
Yeah.
you a really difficult question. There's two parts to it. I'm going to ask you the first part. Do you think you would have got out or left soon after if you weren't quote unquote kicked out?
That's a good question. I probably would have maybe later on.
Mm.
I personally wasn't ready when it happened. I wasn't in that frame of mind of I didn't have that plan B, like, hey, if should I leave now? Should I was still just coming to terms with everything that had happened and I was drinking a lot at that point. So I was just really lost with no guidance. So no, definitely not. I was not prepared at all.
No, of course you weren't. You were a child, right?
Yep.
And when they kicked you out, which just seems incredible to me to be saying, 16-year-old girl was kicked out. Um, did they just not speak to you? You had to go. Like, did they stay in contact? Did they help you get set up anywhere, or was it like, no, you're just so your mum and dad just
No.
said we don't want you under the roof, and then stop speaking to you?
Yeah. My parents would sporadically speak to me, which was always confusing to me because you're not supposed to at all. But no, there was no help getting set up for an apartment or do you need help moving or none of that. I was completely and utterly on my own and that was it.
You must have been so confused, right?
Yeah.
Because and I'm going to project feelings onto you here, so like you tell me if they're wrong, but like you must have had this part of you that was like, I'm glad I'm away from them. They're all horrible, right?
Yep.
But then there must have been this other part, and I don't know which part would have been bigger, but of like, you've been ostracized, you've lost your family, you've lost your mum and dad, right? Like, and I guess like maybe that, well, you tell me, but that feels like that would be the bigger part because it's only like now that you've been through therapy and stuff like that.
hmm
I'm guessing at that time when you kicked out, how did you feel? Like, rather than me try and project onto you, how did you
I'm
feel?
I'm smiling just because I'm reminiscing. A part of me was relieved because
Yeah.
my mother was incredibly toxic. I think that the Jehovah Witnesses really enabled her to um, tap into her abusive nature. They really indoctrinated parents that physical discipline was what God required of them. So it was constant arguing at my house. There was never like a quiet moment. My mother was, constantly gaslighting. She was aggressive, passive aggressive. It was always, I was too sensitive. Everything I did was wrong. I was fat. I was ugly. There was always something. So leaving, a part of me was happy because I was getting away from what I knew was really unhealthy for me and making me miserable. But at the same time, you have that feeling of you've never been out in the world and your entire life you're being told that all these people are wicked, they're evil, they're wolves in sheep's clothing. So you're going through so many overwhelming emotions of confusion where you just want to be free, or in my case, I just wanted to be free, but at the same time, you're scared of absolutely everything. So it was really fucked up because I didn't understand myself. I had no idea who I was, and here I am in this world with an apartment and having to pay my way, and I had to figure out how to, take the bus and how the metro system worked or the underground system works. So you're learning all these things, and I didn't pay my first cell phone bill because I had no idea I had to do that. So there was so many things that I had to learn the rough way. Um, and it was like real life experience really fucking fast. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's like, I hear you talk about like you drank and the stuff like that.
yeah.
But like in many ways, it's no wonder that you drank. It's no wonder that like you reached this place of, you say there was actual suicide attempts, was it?
Yeah.
And that was when you were still living with your parents? How did they react to those?
The first time my mother came up to the hospital and she was shaking her head at me. And she told me that if I had faith in God, that would have never happened. And not long after I moved into my apartment, I remember giving her a call because you still have that need for your toxic parent. There's that trauma bond going. And she got really upset at me and she said, well, why don't you try slicing your wrist again and go drown in a bath of your own blood? And I remember going like, okay, like this isn't normal. Like my mom should be encouraging me. She should be making sure, hey, are you okay? How's your apartment? Do you have food? Do you have no? It was always like that with my mother. There was no compassion or emotion. It was just like, get the fuck out of my face type of attitude. But in front of people, she would cry and say that I was rebellious and I was such a horrible child and she doesn't know what happened to me kind of thing. So um, it was really messed up and confusing and all at the same time being so happy that I was away from that toxic environment. It took me a couple of years to kind of get a good head on my shoulders and figure out who I was and that it was actually better for me to be out of that house with them than still living with them.
I just want to let you know that makes me so fucking angry, man. That your mom could stand there and say those things to you in such a desperate situation.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because we've you can hear the anger in my voice still. We fucking live in a world that wants to like that's so uncomfortable with difficult emotions that it would rather like suppress the truth of what that makes you feel when you hear that.
Yeah.
Than actually give you the validation that anger is fucking entirely appropriate as a result, and everything else, by the way, sadness and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I know what these people are like, toxic, horrible, abusive, narcissistic people are like. And in your moment of absolute desperation and need to be told those things is horrific. It's horrific. And it must have taken a lot. I mean, the strength and the courage that you've shown, even to get where you are today is incredible, by the way. I want to like just
Thank
make
you.
sure we pause on that moment and just say that because I think it's needed. I think we need to say that to you.
I appreciate that. I'm very detached of my emotions right now. I get triggered when I talk about it. So yeah.
And what and how amazing that you have a defense against it. And again,
I consider it a weakness, not a defense. I wish I was stronger. I wish I could be more eloquent with my words when I talk about things like that. But yeah, it tends to, it's a very emotional thing for me. And I guess, yeah, there's a shield that just goes on and I'm detached and like in 2 hours, I'm going to be crying about it, because it's so overwhelming. So yeah, it's a very weird healing process, if I can call it
yeah,
that even.
you absolutely
Mhm.
can. And can I offer a slightly different perspective that
Very much so, yes.
that you don't have to believe, but I believe it enough. And that is that what you just described is, to me, the sign of somebody that has done a lot of work on themselves, that can have the ability in the moment on a podcast, right, where this is being recorded and everything
Yeah.
that comes with that, to have the ability to be able to think, I want to share this, right? I want to step into my power and do this, and it feels the right time for you, whatever. And so your body and you has found a way to be able to do that, and then you're going to revisit later and allow the emotion to come up. You said that yourself, yeah? You'll cry later and let it out.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, that's like, for me, in what I believe, I think that's textbook healing to me.
It doesn't feel like healing. Some days it's messy. It makes me laugh sometimes when I see all these gurus or people on Instagram that are like, oh, healing is wonderful. Have a cup of matcha. And, it's like sunshine and fucking rainbows. And healing is a part of it can be sunshine and fucking rainbows, but it's messy. You have good days, you have bad days. There are days that you feel really confused and you don't know which direction you're going in. But I think that continuous work on yourself is key. You know, go to therapy, find answers, seek people that you connect with, that you trust, that are giving advice that makes sense, that are not, trying to enroll you in something or mess with your mind even more, which is a difficult thing to do because you're feeling so vulnerable and you're looking for answers. And I've followed people that ended up being incredibly toxic. And it took me a little while to get there, but I realized it and it was like, that's not for me anymore. But, it's such a roller coaster of that is healing. But no, definitely, I think that being able to speak about it is definitely part of the healing process. And I know when I got ostracized, there wasn't Instagram, there wasn't all these tools that there are today. So I definitely want to encourage other people that have been ostracized, that are going through so much, to go and get those tools, find the right ones, and be able to heal and find their own voice, because it's something that definitely in the Jehovah Witnesses and other cults you're not allowed to do. You're muted. So I think healing now is such a better journey than it was when I was a teenager.
Yeah. But that, again, man, like, and I just want to encourage people that are listening to really see that, to see that
Yep.
healing doesn't look like the green matcha and all that, the smoothie and fucking like, but it
Mm-mm.
doesn't like, listen, we'll all have moments when that's exactly what we're doing, but that's not, that's like a break from the healing, really, when
Yep.
you're doing that. Yeah. You're describing to me what, and I would really encourage anybody listening to this. You're describing what healing really is, what it looks like. It's feeling the stuff. It's letting it
Yep.
come up. It's creating space in your life to be able to do it. It's in those moments you don't feel like you've said you don't feel like you're healing at all. But fuck that, like man, that is it. That is 100% it. And I want to ask you a question on something that you just said because I find it interesting. Right? How long ago was it, by the way, that you were thrown out? That you left the cult?
Um, well, when I was ostracized, I was about 16, 17. I went back, which is another thing. So when I really, really left, I was about 29, 30.
Okay.
Because I got pregnant with my daughter, with a narcissist. And so I ended up leaving him because he was violent and a drug addict and so on. And so I called my parents, and my mother was like, come home, we're going to help you, and so on and so forth. And when I got there, little few months old baby, and my mother was like, oh, well, now that you're here, you need to come back to the Jehovah Witnesses so that you can have a roof over your head for you and your child. And I remember going, I can't do this, but I figured let's do it. I need a place to stay. So I went back, and my mother was like, you need to study with a mature woman that will be able to guide you. And so I started studying again, and I would ask hardcore questions. Like they would tell me, if you don't come back to the Jehovah Witnesses, your child is going to die at the end of days. And my question would always come back, why would God, that is supposed to be, loving of all his creatures, would kill an innocent child for my mistakes? And I could never get the right answer. It would always
Mm.
be like, let's go read a Bible verse, or it never convinced me. But I put on a show for my parents, and so I could have a place to stay. And I went back in. That was short lived, about a year and a half or so. And then I
And
left again for good.
how long after
So
that was, how long after that, the first time that you left, was it that you went back in?
So that was probably from 16, 17 to 28, 29 or so. Yeah, so like maybe nine
So you were
years.
out for 9, 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Like almost zero contact with your family.
Almost. My mom still had this, I can't explain the control and
Yeah.
that she had on me. It's a very distorted relationship. As you know, you're kind of pulled back in. Oh, I miss them. Like you start thinking about the good times and when they were nice, and my inner child always was seeking her approval. So it took a long time for me as an adult to stop not seeking her approval. So I would just go back in and call her, or, she would call me, especially when I got pregnant. Then it was like, gloves were off. They were really trying to get me back into the Jehovah Witnesses at all costs. So she was bringing me groceries, and all of a sudden she was being this amazing mom that I've wanted my entire life. So it was kind of like trying to sweeten the pot a little bit so I could go back in.
Do you think that was just to try and get you back in there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why
Yeah.
would they want you back in so that they could try and get your child back on,
Yeah.
or just because that's what abusive people do, I guess.
Exactly.
To
Exactly.
just
They would
have more
often
control.
say, you just hit it right on the head to have more control. They would often take my daughter out shopping, and during that shopping, they would read her, Bible stories, and they would talk to her about God, and they were trying to condition her, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want to be with them anymore at that point, and our relationship really broke after I got married, and I moved away with my husband, which I did not know was a narcissist as well. It took me a year or two to figure that one out. But that broke kind of the bond more with my parents. And as that bond broke more and more, and my parents saw that I wasn't coming back in, I remember having this really toxic conversation with my father, where he told me, if you're not going to come back in the Jehovah Witnesses and have faith in God, just go put a bullet in your head at that point.
Your
And that,
dad said that to you.
yeah. And that was the last conversation I had with him. I said, we're done here. Like, you're never calling me again. We're just done. And I hung up in his face. I could not believe that after so many years, here I am as an adult. I felt like I was a child again, being spoken to like I was worthless and a piece of shit, basically. So I didn't want my kids to have to go through that or to be exposed to them. And I didn't want to be exposed to them either. And the weirdest thing is, it took me about a year before I didn't want to call them anymore. And I didn't have that feeling inside of that trauma bond of, I want to call them. I want to straighten this out, but I wasn't the one who did anything wrong. But it's so psychological, like you really have to go through this healing process to quit that trauma bond, which was one of the hardest things for me to come to terms with. Yeah, it was really hard.
Did the trauma bond at any of those stages extend to the cult as well, or
Yeah.
was it just your parents? Like, like obviously we can see that you would miss your parents or crave a relationship with your mum and dad, but did you like miss stuff about the cult as well?
Miss is an odd
Miss,
word.
yeah, probably the wrong word. Yeah.
But I guess you're constantly conflicted with certain things. So it took me a long time before celebrating Halloween with my kids without feeling guilty, without thinking that I was doing the devil's work. You're conditioned for so long, so it takes you an equal amount of time to kind of get over that train of thought, that's so abnormal and makes absolutely no sense. But guilt and fear drove me for a very long time. And I think my daughter was about three, no, probably, sorry, about 7 years old when that guilt started really just being on the back burner. And I was able to enjoy celebrating things with her without having that that guilt, or hearing, cult leaders or my mom in the back of my head saying, hey, what you're doing is wrong. You shouldn't be doing this, and yeah, I was in my early 30s at that point. So it just goes to show how the control is strong and how they really get in your head, and it's hard to shake it out. It's like I refer to it as like a different form of DNA practically, because it's so ingrained in you that you can't just shake it off like it's nothing. It takes years to kind of detox from all that indoctrination and disgusting teachings. Yeah,
It is like the when people say brainwashing, right?
completely.
Um, that's what it is, right? You were brainwashed, and then I guess like you needed to like wash your brain again of everything that was like indoctored into you.
Completely. Yep.
And that's why I asked that question. When I said miss, did you miss it? It's like it's not that you missed it, but the hold over you remained. Would you say so? So would you say that's entirely gone now? Do you ever have moments of like, because I know that most people, or not most, or a lot, maybe most people that I know that have gone no contact entirely with abusive parents will still say that every now and then they still have these moments of like, should I? Does that ever come in, or do you feel like you're free from that now?
Not anymore. The first year after I stopped talking to them, definitely, but now it's been 9 years or so, and
Wow.
it's beautiful. It's the most peace I've had in my entire life. It's once you detox from it, you don't want to go back. Well, in my case anyway, I don't want to go back. The criticism and the shaming and the gaslighting, and like, no, I don't have to deal with that anymore. But there are times where I'll do something and I clearly hear my mother's voice in my head, and it's fucking annoying. You can
Yeah.
you can do so many years of therapy, but there's always a part of that stays with you. Which is why it makes me laugh sometimes when people go, oh, it's healing is wonderful and it's great, but there's dark sides to it too, and you have to deal with that on a daily basis. So,
Do you,
yeah.
when you're like looking for spaces, you talked about one-to-one therapy and stuff. When you're looking for spaces to heal in, right? Uh, are you like now in your life today, right? Are you what's the word I'm looking for? Sensitive to cult like spaces? Or like, do you know what I mean? Would you be easily triggered in a space that has cult like uh what's the word, traits in it?
The second I hear people going off about how God is great, or I shut down completely.
Right.
I can't. Not even going into a church for a wedding. I can't. I guess the trauma is so strong in me that I can't deal with, maybe deal isn't the right word, but I can't expose myself to anything that has to do with God, Bible, anything like that. I'm like, it's like an allergy now.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Just
Yeah.
stay away from me. I want nothing to do with it. I'm happy that people, I respect my friends that are spiritual, and if one of my friends wants to go to church on Sundays, if that makes you happy and you feel complete with that, I completely respect it. But don't come and try to convince me to go or indoctrinate me in any other way, because you're going to get a really dry response from me. Yeah.
Do you have any, do you have, what would you class yourself as now then? Are you staunch, like, are you a staunch atheist? Do you have any kind of faith? How would you
I
describe yourself now?
A part of me wants to believe in God, just because it's a weird process. But when you're pregnant and you, I guess, go through all the motions and you have life growing inside of you, that really made me question a lot more about you know my spirituality, as a person. But I have this huge blockage where I'm like, okay, he might exist, and that's as far as I go. Like, I don't feel like questioning it. I don't feel like researching it. It's it's too much for me. I
Right.
can't handle it at all. So I guess, ignorance is bliss to a certain point. I'm happier not having to think about it or deal with it or yeah, I like right away I get uncomfortable. Like
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah.
It's interesting to me, right? Because I'm going to say something that I really don't want to trigger you, right? But you come across as like I don't know. There's something about you that like I would if I would have said that you have some sort of spirituality or spiritual practice in your life today. You don't have any.
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all. I'm a full-blown pagan. Halloween is my favorite holiday. I refer to pagan as a joke because in the Jehovah Witnesses, it's the worst thing that you can be is to be part of the world. But I celebrating birthdays and all these things that I didn't have as a kid is so important for me to make sure that they're incorporated in my kids' lives. So I go all out for all holidays. Birthdays are especially important to me. But I love holidays. I don't look at the religious aspect of Christmas. I just I see things in a very different way, in a very odd way, I guess you can say. But when I see people, for example, that I come across or friends that I've made and they start getting all Bible-y on me, it's like I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's just not where I want to be. It's not discussions I want to have. Because then obviously all the questions come, well, why are you so close to it? And why don't you want to discuss this? And why don't you believe in God? And it's like if I were to tell my story to everybody, it would really ruin the mood and get everybody feeling really depressed. So, I'd be a good party crasher if it came to that. But, it's hard to not express my opinion now because I've been so suppressed all my life. So when people ask me things, I'm a very straight shooter. I'm very blunt and I call it how it is. And not everybody likes that. I guess I'm an acquired taste and I'm still socially awkward. But yeah, don't come talk to me about Bible stuff. When they come knocking on my door, they get an earful.
Do they
You
knock on
know,
your door?
oh, completely. Last time I was like, get the fuck off my property, you pedophile enablers. Like, get away from me. It's
Yeah. What you say that
yeah,
to them?
completely. I've been through it. My parents protected my abuser, so it's a very sensitive and raw point to me. It's like, don't come and talk to me about God and all this bullshit. It's like, get off my property.
And
I've had my dogs run after them a couple of times. I'll just open the door, let them go. I'm so over it. I'm at that point where I'm done. I'm so done. Yeah.
is that something that you talk about, your abuser? Are we talking about the 26-year-old that you spoke about, or is this something else?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was in kindergarten. I'm triggered. You can see I'm looking to ground myself
We
right
don't
now.
have to talk about it,
Um,
by the way.
I it's an important piece of my story, I guess, because it took me so many years to be able to confront it and to face it because I didn't want to go there. It's part of the reason why I drank so much as a teenager and the suicide attempts and um yeah, when you're in the I'm gonna have a hard time talking.
Right. Okay.
It's
Okay.
real
Let
time.
me do something a second. Let me do something. Let me do something
Yeah,
a second.
yeah,
Let's take a second, just a second, both of us.
yeah,
We don't need to go there at all. We can. You've talked about that your parents protected your abuser.
yep,
People can
yeah,
do the math, right? And
yeah.
I feel like you have still talked about it and you've laid it out there. So let's just have a second here before we dive into it, because we
Okay.
don't have to run
I'm
anywhere.
so detached right now. It's
And
crazy.
we can go. Fuck it. We don't need to talk about that. Let's carry on talking about
Okay,
what we were. What
let's do
makes you
that.
most comfortable? I want you to make the decision.
This I talking about it is good for me. I know it is, but I just have like right now you can see like my cheeks feel really hot and I'm poof.
All right. I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something else.
Sure.
How many children have you got?
I've got
And
two
how old are they
kids,
now?
13 and 17.
Oh wow. So they're they're
And
they're quite grown up. How are they
they
doing?
are. They're doing amazing. They're both neurodivergent and we call them sparkles. They're amazing. They've been such a positive force in my life. Like I didn't know what love was until I had kids. Every relationship I had was abusive, so I never known what a loving relationship was. And when I had my kids, I kind of poured all the best parts of me into them and into our relationship. And being a mom is really what gave me my identity. It's what made me realize what kind of person I truly was. And it's amazing. Being a single mom is difficult. There are days where I'm exhausted completely. But it's just amazing. They've been so incredible and supportive and they're very real. And I like that. Like we talk about everything. There's nothing that we don't talk about. We're very open.
I can't imagine you raising anything other than real children. I mean, in the time that we've spent together, yeah,
Yeah,
what I get from you is that realness. Yeah.
yeah, I don't have a high tolerance for bullshit. So
You feel very centered is the word I'm looking for.
on a good day, there
Yeah,
are
well,
days where I'm so off-centered completely. But yeah, I try to be.
yeah. And what do you think obviously you went to therapy, but like, what are the main things that you've done to be where you are today? And what I mean by where you are today, I mean, is so grounded and so able to be what you are. Like, what do you think you've had to do over however many years it's been?
Um, Therapy was integral and it's still on and off for me. Like I don't think my healing journey is so far from being done. Um, Writing my book was one of the most integral parts of my healing, being able to write down everything that happened and not feeling like I was crazy and it was all in my head. Um, Being able to face reality and put it down on paper was a journey in itself. Um, the last relationship I had after my separation with my husband was another big eye opener. I was with a person who made me feel like I was dating my mother. Um,
Wow.
but it still took me about 6 to 8 months to wake up to that manipulation. And I kept thinking it was in my head, and he was telling me it was in my head. Um, and I was like, but he's running a foundation that protects kids and women from abuse. So he is a good person. But horrible, horrible relationship. And that kind of in a very weird way solidified that I hadn't broken the wheel, even though I thought I did. Um, and that brought me to this whole other portion of my healing where um, I didn't trust myself all over again. And I had to work on myself again. And for a long time, I was like, so if I'm attracted to a person or a friend, don't, because you're just recreating the same thing. So it was lonely for a bit because I didn't want to let anyone in. I thought that I kind of needed to rewire myself once again. And I'm still not at a point where I want a relationship at all. I'm kind of over those. But you never stop learning. I think it's part of the process. You make mistakes. I guess the important thing is to be able to realize it before you're too far down the rabbit hole. But the healing journey is a daily thing. And I don't think I'd be able to be where I am without my kids. They're incredible and resilient, and they encourage me and they bring out the best in me. And yeah, I guess that's where I'm at right now.
Incredible. What if I was to ask you what you think mission or your purpose for life is from here, and it doesn't have to be
Wow.
anything dramatic.
Oh, I'm not really good with eloquent words and all that stuff.
Oh, sorry, I gotta disagree. I gotta disagree with you. I think you've been very, very eloquent today. Very,
Oh,
very eloquent
you're
today.
really nice. It's hard for me sometimes to get a bearing on my thoughts when I'm talking about all of this.
Well, it doesn't come across at all.
You're way too nice. Ah, my gosh, my mission. I don't really know. I mean, I'm at my age, you think I would have a better direction and a better bearing on my life. I don't. I've just want to make sure that my kids turn out to be good human beings and not like anything we've experienced or seen before. So if you want to call it a mission, I guess it's a mission, but it's just what I feel I want to put out there in the world is good fucking human beings that are better than me, that don't make the same mistakes than me, that have learned from my mistakes and are able to determine what they want to do in life. And my daughter, who's 17, will often come back from an outing or something and she'll say, you know what, I thought this person was my friend, but I saw some red flags. And she goes, I don't think that's the right person for me. And that like fills me with joy because I grew up with no red flags. I had no idea what they were. And it just goes to show that the efforts that I've been trying to put into my kids as best as I can with all my flaws and my failings and whatnot still translates to something good. And that makes my day. That makes me happy. So
Yeah, well, good for you. And it does feel very much like a mission to me, you know? It does,
yeah,
man. Like you know what? Like you mentioned some of like, the gurus out there, you know, the drinking
yeah,
matcha tea, green tea and all that sort of shit. Yeah. It's all, I look at it and it's all, I was going to say bollocks. I don't think you use that word, do you?
bullshit.
Bullshit.
But
Yeah.
bollocks works totally for me.
How did you say it? Say it again.
Yeah, bullshit.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's
Bullshit.
the British to Canadian translation there.
Yeah. 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 No, I'm down. I know what bullshit. I know bullshit. Yeah. Um, but like what I like to speak to real people, you know, and you're real. Yeah. You're not like trying to, and I might have said this a couple of times on this podcast when I'm interviewing people, but when somebody makes my body feel the same way that what their words are saying
Yeah.
makes me feel, then I'm good, man. Do you know what I mean? Even if somebody's, and you haven't said anything I disagree with, but even if you were, I could hear anything that you say, even if I disagreed with it, because I just think at least you're not, at least it's not bullshit. You know what I mean? And I think that like, you know, you said you got this bullshit detector now, like, you
Mm.
know, I think the only time our bullshit detector probably goes awry is in our personal relationships, right? Because
Completely.
that's where it plays out. But in any other respect, in every other aspect of your life, I can imagine that, you know who you are, you know
Mm.
where, and like this, the whole point of this podcast is because I want to help people understand that we live in a dysfunctional society, right? And like when you can wake up and really step into your power, truly what
Yeah.
that is, and green tea and all that sort of shit, right? It's stepping in your power and like knowing who you are, being okay with that, with every part of who you are, you know, whether it's letting the dogs chase the Jehovah Witnesses down the garden, or being like, nah,
Yeah.
I fucking ain't talking about the Bible. Like, I think, that's who you are, and you can boldly be that. And for me, that's what it's about. And it feels like a sort of nice place to start to bring this to end. But before we do, I really want to commend you for what you've done and who you are. And, I put the call outs out for this podcast, and I was saying to you, I've got loads of people and we're going to work through and speak to as many people as I can. There's always a little bit of a fear when I get on here and like,
Yeah.
where's this person going to be in their life? Are they ready to do this? And I just want to like commend your courage, really, even in the moment when we went to go down a path that we didn't need to go down. Yeah. Where you communicated more than adequately No, we don't. Oh, I don't want to go here. We don't need to go here. And like for anybody listening, the reason I'm saying this because I think it's really important for anybody listening. There'll be a lot of gurus out there that will tell you that healing is getting to a place where you can just go down that path and it don't matter. That for me is not healing. Healing is the ability to be able to go, I'll go down whatever fucking path I want to go down when I want to go down it, and I will communicate what that looks like in any given moment, you know? And it would have been very easy for you to just think, oh, I'm just going to let myself get all triggered and go here and all that. And you didn't. You fucking communicated adequately. And for me, man, that's what it's all about. So I hope you can, I hope you can receive that in the way that it's given.
Well, I appreciate you so much. And like I've said it before, you've been such an integral part of my healing. And you're in a very vulnerable place when you're healing. And yeah, you have gurus and all kinds of stuff. I think everybody has that path where they're going down that road, and they think that guru is really going to help them, and it got to a point where I was watching videos and I would have a physical reaction to some of these people going, this isn't right, this isn't normal. And yeah, I just had to stop listening to them. And I've learned to be more in tune with my reactions and what my gut is telling me, rather than just pushing it down, going, no. You have to listen to all of yourself, because if your body's having a reaction, your gut is telling you something, there's something not right. I don't care what diploma they have, what diploma they don't have, which celebrity swears by them. I really don't give a shit about that. It has to speak to me, and it has to be real. If not, it's not healing. It's just more bullshit. So
yeah. And again, like, you know, that's some of the best advice I would give to anybody is, if it doesn't feel right in your body, it fucking doesn't matter why it doesn't feel right. Just listen to it. You know what
completely.
I mean? Lastly, and I mean, I can share this underneath, but if people want to find out more about you or anything like that, where's the best place if they did want to come and find you? Are we sharing any of that stuff? That's up to you.
Sure. It's not like I'm putting my phone number out there. Thank goodness. I do prefer animals to people. But
same.
But my Insta is the best way. So yeah, girl, I think it's an underscore, is that, in shambles. I'm not very techy. My kids help me set all that stuff.
Yeah. So, well, we can put all of that in the notes anyway. So we'll link it, or it'll all be linked below wherever people are listening or watching this. And I just want to finish by saying a massive thank you. I've really, really found this a really powerful conversation, genuinely, and I've taken a lot from it and feel very inspired, actually. But I want to give you the opportunity. Is there anything else you want to say before we close this down?
I heal on your own. Make your own research, and don't be swayed by anyone. It's so easy to get swayed by so many people. You know, make your own path, find your own voice. I guess that's the best advice I could give today.
Perfect. A beautiful way to end. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Share this with everyone. I did tell you it would be dysfunctional. So thank you for sticking around till the end here. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, then please help me to grow Dysfunctional by sharing with your friends on social media. You can find me at Josh_FFW. And then wherever you're listening to this or watching this, please make sure that you've liked and subscribed, left us a 5-star review and a comment if your platform allows it. And I'll see you on the next one.